Hello everyone. Now the first question is, Flamu, where the hell have you been? Well, I managed to get a really nasty throat infection. Something just went wrong on my way home from St. Petersburg. I don't know if it was some people on the train or whatever, but I ended up having my throat completely messed up after my St. Petersburg trip. So hence why I haven't really been making any commentaries, because my throat hasn't really allowed it. Now though, we are getting back in business. Don't worry about my sailing here, by the way. I was actually tabbed out to check something, and then I tabbed back in and I realized, whoops, I'm sailing the wrong way. Before we move on to the ship, another thing that I wanted to highlight, I've actually made a poll. Something I've noticed a lot is carriers in this game. I've rarely seen, I've seen people celebrate when you get games without carriers. I've seen people get happy when there's no carriers in a match. I've seen people celebrate things like Space Battle and Ranked just because there's no carriers in it. And on the other hand, when there's double CB, I've seen people just despair and feel very unhappy. And I kind of share those opinions because I don't really feel carriers fit the meta or this game very well at all. In fact, they tend to drag the experience down a fair bit. So I made a poll, and it's got like almost 3,000 votes already. I would love if you guys would also take part in this poll. It basically, the only thing the poll asks you guys is, do you feel that having a CV in your game makes the experience? And then there's 5 options: much better, slightly better, neutral, slightly worse, much worse. And of course, the more votes there are, the better, more effective of a poll it is, because there's a higher sample size. So if you guys feel like taking part in the poll, I'll put it in the comments below. If you guys feel like taking part and just filling out what you feel carriers add to your gaming experience, I would very much appreciate it. Moving on. Sovetsky Soyuz, a work in progress, the tier 9 Soviet battleship. First thing you might notice is, well, it's got 88.1k health, which is fantastic. It puts it above everyone except the Musashi, and the Musashi is of course in a class of its own at tier 9. I mean, Alsace has 74.7, Iowa has 79, Izuma has a bit less than 79, so huge health advantage compared to pretty much all its competition. On the other hand though, in Soviet style, the torpedo damage resistance is straight up the worst. It's 21%. Royal Navy and USN BBs have 25% torpedo resistance, and the rest have even more. I think Musashi has like 55% or something. As I said, it's in a class of its own. This combined, of course, with the massive size of the Sovetsky and the worst turning circle at tier 9 means that torps are obviously a significant threat, which is why I'm kind of pinging my team here. Like, we got an Alaskan, a Salem, and a Yugama who's all sitting back, and I'm pushing in into a crossfire between 2 DDs. So yeah, this is not looking very good. In fact, panic reaction, drop pop some fighter planes, give me any sort of spotting help, and just get the hell out of here. Speaking of the turning circle, you can see it's quite sluggish. It's 950 meters, the worst of the lot. But on the other hand, the rudder shift is actually the best at 14.9 seconds, so the ship doesn't feel quite as clumsy as it potentially could feel. It is, however, slow. At 28 knots, the only tier 9 battleship it beats is the Musashi, and Musashi has 27 knots of speed, so not exactly a huge advantage. You can get decent concealment on the ship though, with 13.1 kilometers of stealth, with the full stealth build of course, makes disengaging combat somewhat possible. It can be challenging if they're really hunting you, but the opportunity to disengage is there. Now the big thing here is the guns. The guns are always going to be one of the deciding factors of a battleship. The gun caliber is 406 millimeters, with 9 guns and the classic turret setup with pretty okay firing angles. It's not a battleship to be taken lightly. Capable of overmatching 27 millimeters of armor, unlike 380s of course, and with the fearsome close-range Soviet dispersion, the Sovetsky is actually pretty scary at those very close ranges. The turret traverse is 30 seconds, which is by far the fastest of the BBs and gives it great target flexibility. Now, some turret traverse on these BBs was nerfed, like the tier 7, and tier 7 for example had its turret traverse nerfed from 30 to 60, and I think the tier 8 also had its turret traverse nerfed, but the tier 9 kept its super fast traverse, so it's still a thing for this one. In return though, for having this great turret traverse, the reload is the worst. 33 seconds without the reload module. The range is also fairly limited at 19.4 kilometers, which is actually something you'll notice in these tier 10 games, because especially if you got carriers forcing very passive play, but even without carriers forcing passive play, if you're forced back like I am because of like DD presence and my team doesn't really want to, my Yugoma doesn't want to push in and scout, and my radar ships are hiding in the back line, you're forced to play very safe and very far away, especially in a ship that is so vulnerable to torpedoes. The range will become a limiting factor at times. Worth noting, of course, I am running the 3 million reload module, which cuts the 33-second reload to about 29, and in return it also messes with the turret reverse. It goes from 30 to 34.5. This might be an expert marksman captain. It's not necessary to run expert marksman. It's one of the few battleships where you don't need to run expert marksman, so obviously it frees up 2 captain points to use on something else like jack of all trades. The AA, sadly, quite pitiful, especially the short-range AA. The short-range AA is actually pretty damn long range. It extends from 0.1 km to 2.3 kilometers. So basically a huge aura right around your immediate surroundings. And this range, this AA only deals 220 DPS. Now, 220 DPS to high-tier carrier planes that have like 30k health, 30k is obviously nothing at all, meaning that if planes get close to you, you deal practically no damage to them at all. So they can literally recall planes right on top of you, and unlike other battleships, you won't really do much about it. So nothing like the Kreml when it comes to AA power. And we got, looks like Musashi Yamato division pushing up the flank. Now this is actually the kind of fight I will happily go and take. I'm gonna happily turn in and take them. You can see, of course, as soon as the ranges get closer, you can see how much the dispersion improves. That's the Soviet battleship formula. The closer you get, the stronger the guns are. And I actually love this. I love this design. I think more battleships should have this. Become scarier the closer you are, and like just encourage this close range fighting. They shoot me, and the damage isn't really that impressive from them. And that's because, well, the armor of the ship is, in classic Soviet style of World of Warships, very, very good. The deck armor is 40 millimeters, and so is the upper belt armor as well. Meaning resistance against most HE and any AP overmatch from Musashi or Yamato. These guys are in fact the perfect example, which is why I chose this commentary. The belt armor extends far towards the nose, halfway between the front turret and the tip, and it's 220 millimeters thick at the front. It's like 400 millimeters on the broadside. And you can see how I'm angling this belt armor against them. Especially, I'm a bit greedy using my back turret here. I'm gonna stop doing it now, since they will turn their guns for me. And even though the armor on the broadside is of course great, if you give too much broadside against either of these two, they will easily pen it and they will delete you. Even though the nose itself is 32 millimeters, with lending itself vulnerable to overmatch, there are hidden plates of 285 and 250 millimeter armor between the nose and the citadel armor. So actually scoring a nose in citadel is not as easy as it appears. On the flip side, of course, the citadel of the Sovetsky is gigantic. It sits high above the waterline. It extends from the front turret all the way to the back turret, which of course, combined with the worst turning circle and the huge size of the ship, means that this ship is extremely vulnerable to flanks, which is why I'm pinging this Musashi, and like I'm really trying to get my team to help me with him, but my Salem is super far away. My Alaska is parked behind an island, so he can't even use his guns. So it turns out I'm actually gonna have to kill this Musashi myself as well. I want to of course push in and brawl, but you cannot push into a crossfire with this thing. That's something to keep in mind. It looks very strong because I'm able to angle against all targets, but if you give a broadside in this thing, you will get deleted instantly. Like flat broadside, this ship is probably one of the easiest ships in the game to citadel. So, well, for a battleship that has the sufficient pen. Worth noting, the AP pen is actually great. It ranks among the top of the battleships at close ranges. At long ranges, it actually overtakes them all. At 15 kilometers and further, the Sovetsky actually beats the Musashi in AP pen value. This, combined with the hard-hitting AP, means that the citadel danger is very real at all ranges. A bit sad, I hit him with all 6 shells, but only 5 were a citadel, so I need to bring in my back turret to finish off this Yamato. And I managed to take down this Musashi Yamato division that tried to push through. Well, the team did help, but it felt very much like a single-handed effort on this flank. So, how do I feel about this ship? I think it's actually in a pretty damn good spot. I enjoy playing it. It's a tier 9, it's not many tier 9s I can say these days that I actually enjoy taking out for a spin, but the Sovetsky Soyuz is one of them. It does have its weaknesses. I mean, if you get into these optimal situations like the one I showed, it's a monster. It feels like a massive, massive monster. But then if you're being torped, if you're being flanked, if you have to deal with any sort of Royal Navy HE spammers or Henry just being able to pen that 40mm, or Hindenburg or Rune, or like any of these that don't really care about your armor, any ship that doesn't care about your armor, if you have to deal with any of these, the huge size, the questionable concealment means that, well, the ship doesn't really feel that strong anymore. And carriers, of course, well, carriers love you. Add in AP bombers and a huge citadel, and I doubt I have to explain what the outcome is. So, it has a very clear set of weaknesses, but it also has a very clear set of strengths. And the challenge for the player is, of course, putting the ship into situations where you can use these strengths. I think it's in a pretty damn good spot, though, and I think it's a lot of fun to play, and I've really been enjoying the Sovetsky Soyuz. It is still a work in progress though, and I don't know what they're going to be changing on it. They might be tweaking some values back and forth, but initial impressions for me for the Soyuz has been fun. Good and fun, with clear weaknesses that can be exploited. Trust me, if, for example, with the way I pushed in and brawled, well, if I'd done that, let's say, against an Iowa or something that's significantly harder to Citadel, because the Citadel is so much lower compared to the Yamato, well, he would have actually had an easier time Citadeling me than I would have Citadeling him. And of course, if the Yamato had pulled the trigger maybe a split second before I did, or if his turret traverse had been fast enough, he would have anticipated my move. He could easily have deleted me as well. Still though, that's of course comes down to the player. 184k damage, not really the most impressive, but this was kind of a short game, and I felt like it still highlighted the very strengths and the situations where you want to be in this ship, and that's, you want to be in the thick of things, you want to be in the thick of the brawl. Team score wise, 2k, it's okay, but tier 10 matchmaking, pretty much only tier 10s. We had like what, 2 unfortunate tier 8s and 2 unfortunate tier 9s, everyone else, 3 unfortunate tier 9s, sorry, everyone else, 4, I forgot myself. I should count myself as a tier 9 as well. But still, the majority tier 10, and a lot of variation, a lot of different targets to fight with, so I quite like this ship. Damage dealt though, we pretty much only fought the battleships. So you kind of end up fighting everything. In general, you actually want to shoot cruisers a lot in this thing, especially close range. But if the battleships decide to push in and brawl, especially these kind of nose-in brawls, which this thing is so good at, you should happily take the offer that they provide. Anyway, that was my commentary, a bit shorter now. Throat still not 100%. I'm starting to cough a bit, which is very annoying, but it should clear itself up. Please, guys, vote in the poll. And oh, final thing, I will be taking part in TwitchCon. I just got I got confirmation, I got my hotel, I got my plane tickets, I got my TwitchCon tickets, everything is sorted and ready. So Friday I will be flying out to Berlin, and I will be taking part in that bar thing at TwitchCon as well. I think it's on Saturday. We're meeting up in a bar with a bunch of the CCs and stuff, and apparently fans are welcome and everyone is welcome, so that should be a cool thing as well. So if you guys are coming to TwitchCon, I will happily greet you guys there, because I'm gonna be in Berlin Friday to Monday. Anyway, that was all for me. Sorry for the long absence, but I am back and I will talk to you guys later. Thank you for watching and have a great one.